media industries have been affected by changes, larger global changes in the American economy over the past 20 or 30 years. If you look back into history in the 1940s or 1950s, you had a stable American economy that was distinguished by these large corporations that offered lifelong, stable employment to their workers, to their employees, with decent benefits. And these companies like General Electric or General Motors served vast mass consumer audiences or consumer groups with their products, all right? So that General Motors put out main brands of cars that it tried to sell to a broad American audience, or TV networks like CBS or NBC developed TV shows that they wanted a broad audience, a broad cross-section of the American public to watch. Now, we've seen in the last 20 years or so a real move away from that stability in the American economy, and that has resonated in media industries as well. What we've seen is the vast expansion of the service sector of the economy, with lower wage jobs in industries like fast food, healthcare, the retail sector of the economy. And these jobs in the more recent American economy tend to not be high wage, but lower wage jobs, and there's much less stability in employment, where companies will increasingly shed workers, engage in large scale layoffs in an attempt to remain flexible and competitive. Companies also increasingly rely on lower wage temporary employment services for their jobs. Now, this trend has been complemented by the decreasing clout and power of labor unions. American labor unions throughout the earlier part of the 20th century played an active role in joining together, cooperating and organizing on behalf of the economic interests of workers in a range of economic sectors. Labor unions worked to organize to get higher wages and better benefits for its workers. And the impact of labor unions was to guarantee a certain degree of stability in employment and a certain comfortable wage or salary for jobs. Now, what's happened is that over the past 30 years or so, there's been a real drop in the number of workers in the U.S. that belong to labor unions, and that's been accompanied by a drop in the power and clout of labor unions. So increasingly, labor unions have less power to persuade large companies and corporations to provide better wages and better benefits for its workers. Another characteristic of this more recent economy is the focus on more specific audiences and consumer groups. Increasingly, large companies are not trying to reach some huge undifferentiated consumer audience, right? That Comcast or NBC or General Motors, they're not trying to sell the same product to everybody. Instead, companies are now trying to reach out to more specialized niche audiences and consumer groups, and to serve the preferences of particular consumers. Right? So, for instance, we're moving away from media where a television network like CBS is trying to reach everybody in the U.S. Instead, we've got the proliferation of, for instance, more specialized cable program services like MTV that are trying to reach a very specific demographic group, in this case, much younger viewers. And we're moving even more dramatically in this direction of specialization with online services like YouTube that are trying to customize their program services to even more specialized audiences. So again, much more specialization in the economy and attempts by corporations to reach these more specific target groups. Another characteristic of the modern corporation that is a change from the past is the increasing inequality of pay and compensation for those that work for a particular corporation or company. And we see this growing inequality among those that are employed by a firm in media industries as well. Now, of course, there has always been a certain level of inequality in pay and compensation for businesses. However, if you look back to the 1940s or 50s, again, that was an era where employees had a fairly decent income and salary, and there was a fairly modest gap between the pay at the bottom for entry-level employees at a company and pay at the top, the compensation for your top corporate executives. However, what we've seen in the past 20 years, 20 or 30 years, is a real explosion in terms of the dramatic increase in this differential in pay between your average person or employee working for a firm and the pay of the top corporate executives. Right? In part, this has happened because of what we talked about earlier, that with the decreased influence of labor unions and the attempts of corporations to be more profitable, companies have laid off lots of workers and are relying more on cheaper part-time workers, temp agencies, and in general trying to limit their costs for labor. And at the same time, though, we've had pay for top corporate executives really explode into the stratosphere, with top executives gaining contract for really extensive pay and perks. This chart here really illustrates the differential and inequality between your average entry-level employee for a company and the top corporate executive. And this chart answers the question, how many workers can you hire for the price of one CEO? How many workers would it take to equal the salary or compensation for one corporate executive officer? And you see here in the chart that it's pretty dramatic. For instance, at the Walt Disney Company, the average employee makes about $10 an hour or $26,000 a year. Well, your top CEO makes $29 million a year. So that means that for the cost of the pay of that one CEO, you could hire more than 1,000 employees. Another example would be Time Warner, right? Your top CEO gets paid roughly $16 million or so, while your average level of employee, entry-level employee, makes about $20 an hour or $52,000 a year. That means you could hire 423 employees for the cost of compensation for one CEO at Time Warner Cable. So again, we're seeing that a distinctive feature of media businesses today is this huge gap between the pay of entry-level employees and your top corporate executives, and that this has dramatically increased over previous decades.